This was actually 4:10 this morning. This is when I was very happy that he made it, because they tested people before they left. And if you didn't pass that test, you're not getting on the bus, which means you're not getting on the plane.
Scott Fehrenbacher is one step closer to being reunited with his son Spencer.
He's been optimistic, he's been even, he's been very positive.
Spencer is one of the 3,700 passengers who have been quarantined on the Diamond Princess in Japan for 2 weeks. He's a permanent Canadian resident, but as an American citizen, he'll be on a U.S. flight. His family back in Fort Langley won't be able to see him for another 2 weeks while in quarantine at a military base either in California or Texas.
He's going to be in a much safer place, and so I don't mind the extra 2 weeks. He doesn't mind the extra 2 weeks. It's just not on the Diamond Princess.
Spencer has been studying in Tianjin, China for almost 2 years. He was celebrating Chinese New Year with friends on the ship and doesn't know when he'll see them again.
None of us are really sure if and when we're going back to China. It's just created a kind of a lot of emotions to process all at once.
Sometime this week, some of the 255 Canadians on board will also be flying home. Anyone with symptoms will remain in Japan. Others will be flown to Canada Forces Base in Trenton in Ontario, where they'll be assessed and then quarantined for 14 days at NAV Canada Training Institute in Cornwall. As for Spencer, he can't wait to be reunited with his family back in Fort Langley.
The plan is to go meet my dad, sit down at a Trading Post brewery there in Fort Langley, and have a good beer and a good chicken sandwich, some yam fries.
Grace Key, Global News.
To the latest on the COVID-19 outbreak and a huge spike in the number of cases in China, 15,000 new coronavirus infections and 250 more deaths. The increase due to a new method China is now using to diagnose that disease.
Meanwhile, off the coast of Japan, dozens more passengers on that quarantine cruise ship have tested positive, bringing the total aboard to more than 200.
That is other quarantine passengers who are still healthy, including a Fort Langley man desperate to get off that ship. CTV Shannon Patterson reports.
It is currently day 9 of our quarantine.
9 days since Spencer Fehrenbacher has been able to leave his tiny cabin aboard the Diamond Princess off the coast of Yokohama, Japan.
There certainly is a lot of opportunity to be stir crazy, and that's one reason I'm really so proud of him, because he's kept an even keel when the environment around him is anything but that.
257 passengers and crew have now tested positive for coronavirus.
There is a possibility, given that there are new infections being identified this many days in, that there is something in the cruise ship environment that's contributing to new infections.
The 29-year-old from Fort Langley sits in quarantine.
This is the captain from the bridge.
While new cases are announced each morning.
The bad news is they have 44 new cases of passengers having tested positive for the virus.
Imagine if we had a report that there were 44 cases in your building, and then just don't worry about it, you're safe. Even 44 cases in Vancouver, I think we would all recognize that that's a situation we're uncomfortable with.
Japanese authorities are now allowing passengers over the age of 80 who've tested negative to get off the ship and finish their quarantine on land.
I'm remaining hopeful that here over the course of the next 48, 72 hours, I might have that opportunity and I might have the chance to get off the ship.
Put yourself in that position that you're surrounded by one of the biggest hot zones on the planet. You just don't want to stay there.
Foreign Affairs is focused on the 12 Canadian passengers who've already contracted the virus on board the cruise liner, leaving healthy people like Fehrenbacher in limbo.
It leads you to be very restless about the safety of the people on board and my son.
Shannon Patterson, CTV News, Langley.
A Fort Langley father says he is holding his breath tonight, waiting for his son to be evacuated from a cruise ship in Japan. More than 285 people on board have now been diagnosed with the new coronavirus, now known as COVID-19, including 15 Canadians, and cases globally continue to climb. CTV's Alyssa Thibault reports.
I'm not going to take a deep breath until that plane is wheels up and out of Japanese airspace.
From Fort Langley, Scott Fehrenbacher is counting down the minutes until his son is evacuated from the Diamond Princess.
Hello, everyone. It's Spencer Fehrenbacher.
Spencer is one of hundreds who have been quarantined on the ship for more than a week, and the US government is now flying home American citizens. That includes Spencer, who's also a Canadian permanent resident.
They've given him instructions on how many bags they can take.
But there are no current plans to evacuate the Canadians on board.
We are aware that the US government is making arrangements to bring American citizens aboard the Diamond Princess to the US. Canadians on board with immediate medical concerns are encouraged to consult ship personnel.
The news comes as Europe confirms its first death, a Chinese tourist who died in hospital in France. More than 1,500 people have now died from the virus, and the number of confirmed cases is upwards of 66,000. 8 of those are in Canada, and another presumed case announced here in BC on Friday brings the provincial total to 5. But the World Health Organization says there is no sign the virus is exploding.
We call on all governments, companies and news organizations to work with us to sound the appropriate level of alarm without fanning the flames of hysteria.
As for Spencer, his journey is not over yet. He'll travel to an airbase in either California or Texas and spend another 14 days in quarantine before heading back to Vancouver.
My other son and my son-in-law and I we're all growing beards until Spencer arrives at YVR, and we're going to shave and have a big party, whenever that is.
Alyssa Tebow, CTV News, Vancouver.
Now to the latest on the coronavirus. More than 200 Canadians desperate to leave China during the outbreak of the virus have finally been flown back home by the federal government. Meanwhile, more Canadians locked down on a cruise ship off Japan have been infected with the virus. It's been a tense week for BC families wondering if their loved ones will get sick. CTV's Ahmad Agahi has the story.
By night, it landed at Vancouver's airport to refuel. By day, the now famous charter flight carrying 174 passengers from the epicenter of the coronavirus in Wuhan, China, landed at a special military quarantine in Trenton, Ontario.
Hi, look, when he finished his speech, actually everybody just clapped and everybody was like so happy to be back and be safe.
They were joined by another 39 Canadians hours later on an American charter. The plan now, keep everyone in isolation for 2 weeks in fears they may have contracted the coronavirus.
It was a very long night.
Meanwhile, many other Canadians are in limbo.
I'm talking to Spencer literally about every 2 hours.
Scott Fehrenbacher's son Spencer is in quarantine halfway across the globe on a cruise ship near Tokyo, Japan. 61 out of the thousands on board Diamond Princess have tested positive for coronavirus.
Oh my gosh, it was just a few hours ago that my son told us that he was in fact negative.
Fehrenbacher says his son is keeping a positive attitude but can't leave his cabin for another 10 days.
He'll just make it the rest of this time, and we'll have a great party for him when he arrives.
Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister says 2/3 of the Canadians wanting to leave Wuhan have been evacuated. Another flight for anyone still there is scheduled for next Monday.
It's quite a good thing that we have a bit of time in between because it really allows us to make sure that we contact every family, make sure that everyone who wants to get on board can have their name on the manifest.
And Ahmad joins us now. Ahmad, the BC Centre for Disease Control also updated the number of people they've tested today.
And the new numbers show that more than 200 British Columbians have been tested for coronavirus since the outbreak began. Some were tested more than once, but as of today, there are only 2 confirmed cases here in BC and 2 presumptive cases, and all the infected people are connected to 2 households and are isolated inside their homes. Bijan.
Thank you, Ahmad.